Okay, call the meeting to order. Okay, get our minute taker and our time. So first we'll open the floor for public comment. If there is any.
I'll go, nobody else.
Yeah. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Kelly from Bristol. And I wrote something up. I'm a little bit worried that the board is still not hearing the concerns of the community. At the last board meeting on August 27th, Floyd stated that him and Patrick were chatting earlier that day about putting $244,000 on the ballot in November for what he called a current project. To me, that sounds like we have or know we're going almost $250,000 over budget. It was buzzing around the community prior to that meeting that day that we were the exact same number over budget. So I am inclined to think that admin and possibly the board already knows this. It has been requested by the community and by myself via public comment that the community gets an update on the spending for the Beaman project and the Mount A project that are currently underway. But that still has not happened. The lack of communication when spending taxpayer dollars is something I really hope that we can work harder to remedy. So much time and money has been spent on the school-based choice with the UHS, yet never have I heard the community ask for such. I'm concerned about the equity of this for all the students if transportation is not provided. It states in the draft that's linked to today's meeting that students and the parents of students are responsible for transportation. While it does state per request, a child can access transportation on a existing route, I would ask the board request how many routes between Mount Abe and Virgins High happen per day to get a better idea of how accessible course choice will be to all students. I worry that the collaborative program will only be accessible to the students with the privilege to their own vehicle or a parent that can drive them to and from midday when most parents are working. What happened to giving our children a fair access to their education? Because it doesn't feel like all children or even the majority will have the privilege to access course choice. Yet this is where so much focus is and not on construction update when the community is talking about that and their worry of spending. Additionally, I understand that we're appointing a new board member tonight to represent Bristol. And I just want to say on record that I hope you guys choose the one who has proved with her actions she represents the people of Bristol already. And that's Shauna. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Any other public comments at this time? Vicky, Liz is also online. Okay, I don't see any other public comment. So we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is an action item to approve the agenda. Can I please get a motion? Melissa?
Okay.
Kylie seconds. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Next, we're going to move into an executive session, VSA 313-8.3, appointment of a public officer, and we're going to invite in Peter Heffernan, who's going to represent our select board, and Patrick Lean, our superintendent. Can I please get a motion to enter executive session? Justin?
Second.
Sarah second. Those in favor of moving into executive session at 6:04, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So we will move ourselves into the campfire room and we'll invite participants in one at a time.
And should we let Brian know the plan for him since he's virtual?
Yeah, we did send him an email about that we'd invite him into a breakout room.
Okay, so he knows what to expect then.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
think so.
Great. So I'll create the breakout room. I gave you co-host, so when we need to invite in, since we'll be in there with the computer, you'll be able to do that.
Okay.
Second motion. No, Sarah did. Yes,
But you made it, right, Justin?
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know.
Patrick, what's that? Am I going? Yeah, you'll join.
Yeah.
What's the steps that we take?
Thank you.
All right. I have an executive session at 7:24. Back to my agenda. Okay. So thank you to the 3 people who showed up to interview for this seat. We know it's a big commitment to be here. We truly appreciate how much our Bristol community wants to support our education system and be part of this board work. We had great conversations with each of you. It was riveting. We loved having it, and it was a great experience I'll speak for everybody. It was a great experience for all of us to do that, so. At this time, we'll look for an action to appoint a board member to the vacant Bristol seat.
So, I moved that we appoint Meredith Rossignol to the empty seat for Bristol.
A second to that motion? Second. Oh, either. Either one. Justin, second is that? Yeah. All those in favor of appointing Meredith Rossignol to the vacant Bristol seat from now until March 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'd like to welcome Meredith to the seat. So you can come and join us, Meredith. You won't be a voting member tonight, but you'll be here, and then we'll get you squared away for the rest of that.
Meredith, could you spell that?
We got it. Go ahead.
Okay, you're good.
All right. We're gonna move on down to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion? for the consent agenda, please. So moved. Kristen,
Second.
second by Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Next, we'll move into the executive limitations monitoring. So the first is an action to approve monitoring report 2.5, the emergency superintendent succession. Can I get a motion, please? Justin, second?
I'll second. Go ahead. I'll second.
Sarah seconds. Any discussion?
Forward.
Nothing? Feeling good? Okay, all those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.5, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Okay. Next is the financial report update.
We can start there. You'll see the fund balance has jumped a little bit with the state, their calculations on the extraordinary expenses are consistently higher than what we anticipate they will be, which has pushed our fund balance up from the 494 to the 819. Which expect we'll chat about here in a little bit, that fund balance. It's early in the year. Expenses are yet to be fully encumbered. Yeah, it's pretty early.
Anyone have any specific questions for Floyd? No? Feeling good? We'll move on then to the update of Portrait of a Learner.
So just a brief update here, the work that we learned about at the retreat, that at the August meeting, the board approved kind of moving forward with and using the Ed Reserve funds to pay for is moving ahead. We actually have a meeting, a check-in meeting with Up for Learning tomorrow. There's still time. We have 4 board members right now. I'm kind of new, Aaron. I want to make sure that's accurate. You would make a 4th board member who
Yes.
is going to be part of this sort of core team. That is going to be ideally a few more students than adults on this core team, a rather large group. So it's going to be staff members, which are members of the advisory council that you might recall we started last year. So if you're an advisory council member, you're automatically on this core team, and folks knew that when they signed up. In addition to that, there's room for community members. We have 1 community member at this point that has signed on. So there's still room, although this work is getting started right away, but there's still room if people get to it quickly for more community members. And there's room for 1 or 2 more board members. You have to be careful not to go over a quorum, but there's room for 1 or 2 more board members if they wanted to participate as well. The students we're still getting the student interest that we're looking for, but that's underway. And really the kickoff to this work is next week on Tuesday, the August 1st morning retreat for this core group.
And I did learn today that there's kiddos from Bristol Elementary School who have joined. There's 4 of them,
Yep.
so that's super exciting. I think that's the only elementary school so far.
I just got 1 more today from Robinson. So we have 5 elementary students right now, still waiting to hear from Beeman and Moncton. We'd love to get students from all of our schools. And we have, I think 4 or 5 students from Mount Abe right now, not counting the 2, maybe 3 co-facilitators. So this is co-facilitated by Mount Abe students and Up for Learning staff, this whole process and the community engagement that will follow. So really exciting work, and it's getting underway. Let me know soon, please, if you'd like to join as a board member.
Any other questions or comments about that work? Okay. Then we'll move down to the discussion items for fiscal year 26 budget, the governor's letter.
And just to set the stage for this a little bit, there's no real change in any presentation to the budget from what you saw in August. We don't have any new information to share, so it's effectively the same presentation. The new piece is the letter from the governor that's come out since then. That seemed important, as Aaron and I and Mike were talking about this agenda, like an opportunity just to have a dialogue about that letter and all of this to help keep you thinking about what target is the board going to set for FY26, which typically happens in October. And that kind of sets me and my team in motion to come up with ways to reach that target. And certainly the governor's letter has some impact on or influence on that thinking. So
In reading that, did anyone have any thoughts or things that stood out to them as we should capture that's important when we're moving forward, and thinking about the budget?
I mean, I personally was a little frustrated by it. Just it's sort of felt as if, the greater boards of the state. And it could just be the way that I interpreted this, because it just felt like, we were being irresponsible and putting forth these budgets that were, way above what they should be. Instead, they were flat. And it was still a huge increase, and it just kind of makes me wonder, like, okay, what's actually being done about the health insurance piece? Like, that's a huge piece for us, and we don't have anything to do with it, but yet we're given this ginormous increase that we have to factor into our budgets, and it just, it left me feeling very frustrated, and actually it kind of, it didn't leave me feeling very positive, to be honest. It kind of felt like a slap in the face, like, no, guys, doing this, don't do this again, because this is all gonna land on you, when it's sort of like, come on, man, like, there's so many other factors, and this isn't helpful. That's just my gut.
To bring the local context into the conversation around the governor's letter. So effectively, the letter said if school districts are on the state level fund,
Yeah.
because of some one-time funds that were used in prior budgets and the healthcare cost increasing, we could expect to see statewide about a 7% increase in the tax rate. I wanted to contextualize what level fund means. And there are kind of two different ways you can look at level funding. You can look at it, we spend the same in FY26 that we spend in FY25.
Mhm.
You could also think of level funding as the cost per pupil in FY26 is the same as the cost per pupil in FY25. If it's the spend the same amount of money, budget to budget, level funding means effectively cutting $2 million.
Right.
Because if we keep everything the same, all the same staffing, all the same programming, et cetera, what you saw in last month's presentation is the overall spending increases by about $2 million. So to level fund means effectively cutting $2 million.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the cost per pupil staying the same, because we anticipate a drop in our long-term weighted average daily membership, that 2 million becomes 2.6 million. So just to put that in sort of local dollars, and again, super early in the budget season, those numbers are there's a lot of guesstimating going into creating those FY26 projections. But as best we know right now, that's what that means in our local context.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Liz, go ahead.
I think it's certainly frustrating. I think that frustration was reflected in our last budget season. It's frustrating for our students, for our staff, for our community, for us. There's also some empowerment, right? To look at it as healthcare is important and it is out of our hands. And I think that it's going to be, it's well known as a benefit for our staff and a positive thing to have that. So the empowerment piece is that we know ahead of time. You just gave us 2 million and 2.6, and while it makes my heart race to hear that, it also is as soon as we could ever possibly start thinking about it now, at least for this year. I think we were thinking about it last year, and we were thinking about it nearly a decade ago, right? So it's what can we do? And that this can kind of help give us that focus on community engagement. It could help focus our work to have this challenge presented to us and to look again back at some of our other conversations. What levers do we have? The Levinson report, what options are there for us to have the least impact on programming and services for students while still making it sustainable for our community to support, and having an estimate of the 7% and knowing, like, so I get that it could all change and it could all wave, but that's information I feel like we could start a community discussion around right there and kind of start processing what this means for us as soon as possible.
Do the finance
committee update, like we have started having conversations. I know it's later on the agenda, so we won't go into that, but I do have a question, Patrick. When do we anticipate, like I know.
Sorry, I wonder if folks can speak up
Oh.
or we can maybe go
You can,
closer.
yeah. Feel
Is
free to
that
go chat.
okay?
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to
Sure.
do from
Yep.
here.
Feel free. So the Green Mountain Care Board has to provide their rulings to the hospitals for the increases on 9/30, which is Monday. So how soon after that do you think that you, being school districts, will hear what that health insurance increase is? Is it typically like in the next month or two? Just out of curiosity, what the timing is.
Good question. I'm not
Typically,
coming up with
the
any.
December release.
Really? Okay.
They give you a wink and a nod with what they think it's going to be
Yep.
in November. But here's the number is December.
Okay. I was just curious what the
Yeah,
timing
and
was.
and the figures we've been using have been sort of a result of the buzz that's already happening around where it's gonna land, and so that influences what we've put in for assumptions now. We get a little bit more of a nod in November, but then finalize later, yeah.
Interested to see where it all comes in.
And usually, like even the December 1 tax commissioners letter, which sets a lot of things in motion for us. Almost never, I can't think of a single time it's come on December 1st. It's come as late as mid-January. Like
There's a commitment, we're hearing a great commitment on the state to be getting information out earlier. And I think that will, I think they're trying to be a little more preemptive in terms of anticipating those costs. And we'll wait and see when they get here, you know.
I guess that was my one question for this governor's spending letter. I mean, in some ways, it feels like it just outlined the reality that we already knew, right? Which is, this is a really tight cycle again, even if we do nothing. The thing that I found interesting was this sort of sentiment of like, oh, but we can do it if we work together, state and local school boards.
Yeah.
But the only state work that seems outlined there, it seems like that we can contact the Agency of Education to find about technical support and group data reporting. And I guess that was a question to Patrick and Floyd, like, to what extent is that a useful, I don't know how you answer this question, so I'll be careful. To what extent do we think that there really can be a collaborative process this year in constraining costs? As opposed to what extent do we think we have to curtail them locally solely?
It's interesting. I mean, it sort of unpacks the complexities of the education funding formula in Vermont. We have a statewide education funding formula that's decided on by local communities. And what local communities do impacts every other community. So the high spending communities are in a way paid for by everyone in the state. And so that makes that relationship pretty complicated. If we could somehow all get coordinated as local communities and make similar decisions to affect the statewide funding formula, that could do some pretty amazing things. Coordinating however many dozens of local communities in the same way seems unrealistic. A different way, when I was first thinking about sort of the relationship between the local and the state, we do have some control locally to contain costs. It's limited and impactful, but we do have some control over that. It's primarily in how many people do we employ. That's the big driver. There are other things, but that's the big one. When I think about the state, I'm thinking about the Commission on the Future of Public Education, which is going to be, I think they're in the very early stages, but going to be engaged in some long-term planning. Like, so what do we do long-term? But they also have a charge to this December 15th, have something ready for an immediate relief for the legislature to act on. What that's going to be, how impactful it's going to be, both in terms of savings or on what we do for our students, is very much, I think, up in the air at this point.
So I'd add, there's contain and explain, right? We can only do what we can do to contain these costs. But what we can do is we can work to find the information to explain better. And what I mean by that is the business officers organization in the state is looking to pull together the unfunded statute, AOE directives, et cetera, that have landed at our feet to cover those costs without any additional funding or any allocation for that increase. So we're working to go back, we're trying to go back 5, maybe we can go back a little more to identify what some of those items have been and then quantify them to be able to put some kind of a number to it. Because if we can go to our community and say, yeah, we've got a $2.6 million. In the last 5 years, we've had unfunded requirements to our budget that reflect 1.7 million of that. It doesn't contain the cost, but it explains it. And then if the school boards as an association were to do the same thing, look to put that pressure, then it becomes a little more difficult, to your point, to say school boards control your costs. You have a little bit of information to say, stop pushing costs on us with nothing with it.
In a similar vein, there's a lot of interest in unpacking what actually gets paid for out of the ed fund. There are a lot of things
Bingo, yeah,
that come out of the ed fund that didn't used to come out of the ed fund.
that kind of transparency would be, I
Right.
think, very nice and helpful.
Now, it doesn't necessarily, assuming we continue whatever programming or supports are being paid for from the ed fund, it releases the pressure from the ed fund, but increases the pressure somewhere else. So it's sort of out of one pocket to the other. So I don't know that overall that necessarily creates the relief for taxpayers, but it at least is a little more transparent about what is the ed fund actually paying for and should it be paying for all those things?
Right, yeah. I think that's the $1 million question.
Certainly won't.
Yeah. I should have put your
2.6 of them.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about the governor's letter before we move on? We'll move down then to a discussion item, the use of fund balance.
Yeah, and again, as we were talking about building this agenda, and as Floyd pointed out with the fund balance, when he was going over the finances, thought it was good to start the conversation about what do we do with that fund balance? So give or take 800,000. And historically, there've been sort of a couple of options. You can put some of that into an education reserve that can be used for basically anything but facilities. You can put it into a capital reserve that can only be used for facilities. Or you can apply it to sort of buy down the tax rate, basically. We have historically advised against using it to buy down the tax rate because just like we saw in the governor's letter, when you use one-time funds to buy down a tax rate, the next budget cycle, any less than that you put in digs you a bigger hole than you've got to dig out in the next budget cycle. So if we put in 800 grand this time, don't put anything in next time, our hole is now $800,000 bigger than whatever FY27 would be. So that's the risk. The strategy is if you use one-time money to buy yourself time to make decisions that are going to get cost under control and provide the kind of education you want and all that, then you are able to strategically overcome that $800,000 hole you just dug and maybe then some. So there is a potential strategic use for that fund balance. We do also have some pretty significant facilities needs, sort of tops on the list, Mount Abe roof. It's currently leaking a bit. We've patched and repaired, and we've done this for years. We're very much on borrowed time. We've talked about this for years, like that's been on our list for a while, but it's such a big ticket item. It's been a little hard to strategize around. And we don't have grant funds that are helping to pay for that. The work that's happening now, which is also substantial, is around HVAC, and those are both half funded by grant funds. So that's what made those a possibility now. We also know that the electrical main at Mount Abe is outdated. We can't get parts for it in some ways, so we're a bit on borrowed time with that as well, which is another big ticket item. So the roof is these are old figures, we'd have to get them updated, but a couple of years ago it was 1.3 million, the electrical upgrades 1.2. And we've been told by the fire marshal that they won't approve any big, in particular interior projects until we sprinkle the building, which is 1.7. So those are all pretty big ticket items, so that said, I think when combined with the fact that if we don't spend some money in our capital reserve, at some point, that's going to count against us in terms of our cost per pupil and the spending threshold. Right now, our projections have us quite a ways away from that spending threshold, but if we have 1 year of money that we put into that fund and it doesn't quite bring us up, the next year, that year, and the next year now combine to count against our cost per pupil. So we're gonna probably start creeping up against that spending threshold more rapidly as we get subsequent years of capital reserve funds counting against our cost per pupil. So strategically, it makes sense for that reason to spend some of that money, and we have significant capital needs. So we'll want to be thinking about spending that. So all that to say, with this 800, our current thinking is we should spend some of the capital reserve fund, which needs voter approval, for some combination of sprinklers, roof, electrical upgrade, supplement the capital reserve request with general fund dollars, which we would have this year's money. And when the summer turns and we get into the next budget season, we have next year's money too, that we could kind of combine in addition to the capital reserve to try and check off some of these really big impactful projects that we're on borrowed time with. All that to say that some portion of that 800,000 in that scenario should go back into the capital reserve to help replenish those reserves, because PCB testing is on hold still. At some point, we're going to be tested. We don't know what we're going to find. That could be a costly remediation, so we're probably going to want to have some funds available to take care of that. There are no state funds currently to help do any of that. And there's plenty of other needs to tackle. So I think it's going to be a balance of how much might go into the ed reserve, how much might go into the capital reserve, and how much do we use to offset taxes, which is not super helpful because those are always your options. But thinking about, depending on where we land for a target and how far away from that target we are and what the tax impact is going to be, that might drive how much are we willing to kind of risk a bit, because it is a risk to buy down the tax rate.
Depending on what we do, is it a town vote? Did I hear you say that? Like with what we do with 800,000?
Yeah, so the town would vote to, so the town taxpayers have to vote to spend money that's in the capital reserve. The voters don't have to approve money that's spent from the ed reserve. The board has the authority to do that. But the taxpayers do have to approve putting that fund balance into the capital reserve, and I think into the ed reserve.
Yeah, in order to use it to buy down. They
Well, the
direct.
default is, if we don't put a vote out, the default is that the fund balance offsets taxes. So there's no vote on that. It's usually whatever the remainder is after we've put money in the two reserve accounts goes to offset taxes.
What's the time frame on something like this?
January, basically. So you have to decide when you're finalizing the budget. Because that's same, when you warn the budget, that's the same window for warning for the other vote if you're gonna ask to put money in these accounts.
Is this a task that like the community engagement committee puts their head around what to do and how to put it out there to the towns? Or
In terms of the fund balance specifically,
Yeah.
Historically, it's been the board deciding what to do with the fund balance. Now with sort of an up and running finance and facilities committee, that could be something that they wrestle with, because there's a relationship, of course, between this fund balance and our facilities needs and other needs, that could be met through an ed reserve. But even with that, they'd bring some recommendations or thoughts back to the board for the action when you actually adopt a budget and adopt the warnings and all that.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I have this correct. Any use of the capital reserve fund has to go to the voters,
Correct.
and then the fund balance does not have to go to the voters.
Yeah, so if this board wants to put money into the ed reserve or the capital reserve account, the voters have to approve that
From
The
the
def-
fund balance.
from the fund balance, yep. The default is that it goes to offset taxes.
So with the current projects we have, like the Beaman project, you said that one's half grant funded.
Mhm.
So the other half is coming from where? And how much do we have left to pay on it and where are we at with that project?
Floyd, do you want to talk to the
Sure,
specifics of that?
happy to chat on that. The two HVAC projects, one here at Mount A and the one at Beaman, are both coming in under budget. At this point I think we were all but $200,000 paid. That 200,000 is all grant funds. So our position, our cash position from a general fund standpoint on these two projects is very good right now. And we'll finish in a very good position.
So you wouldn't anticipate any of this needing to go to any of the current projects?
No, we actually had, when we did the HVAC at Beaman and moving the units onto the roof, the savings that we were able to recognize with some of the things that we did during the project allowed us to generate the funds to put a new roof on Beaman under that project and still have it come under the umbrella of the grant money. So we actually are in pretty great shape with those two projects within the constraints of our budget. We don't anticipate general fund dollars from this year's budget in a material manner being needed to finish these.
And just to contextualize that a little bit, a couple of winters ago, I think it was, not last winter, but the one before, Beaman had a portion of their old HVAC system blow off the roof. You might have noticed it as a nice lawn ornament in front of Beaman for quite a while. And that did some damage to the roof that we kind of patched together. So the ability to work that new roof into this project was very timely because it was needed.
It was spectacular. I mean, the roof at Beaman was, they were tough, struggled to get the age, but more than 20 years. And in our assessment, it's one of the priority items that was identified by Truex that we needed to replace. So we were able to put it together with this project currently.
And finance and facilities you have, has the Truex?
We're still waiting on, we've seen a draft of it, and that's what Floyd's referencing. Floyd's meeting with Trips Collins on Thursday. And we're gonna get an update on, because they took some of our feedback. There were just some errors and things that we noticed in the report. They're gonna go back and correct and then finalize. So we expect that anytime now.
Which will have more recommendations, priorities and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that will probably drive an update of our capital improvement plan
Right,
as well.
right. So, the priorities that were sort of laid out here and the possibility with the fund balance might shift depending on. I mean, the roof seems pretty imperative. But
Yeah, and the draft that we've seen, the roof and the electrical upgrade were two high priority areas. I don't remember about the sprinklers because there aren't currently sprinklers, so they weren't looking to see that it's a system that's outdated, but we have that from the fire marshals that has to happen.
Can I follow up just on the fund balance a little bit? So my sense is that's $800,000 that we thought we were gonna spend, but we didn't, right? To what extent of that money do we think actually are savings that might carry forward? Right, so we budgeted 800 grand, we didn't spend it, and I'm sure there are many reasons why that's the case. How much of that might we be able to realize as a sort of reduction in this year's budget that carries into next budget that we can actually propose, not spending the funds that we didn't spend?
Yeah, great question.
Great question.
So the complicated answer, as is often the case when we're talking about education finance, is so much of that fund balance is driven by our inability to fill vacant positions. The only way you realize those savings going forward is take those positions out of the budget. So that's taking advantage of attrition, which is a good strategy to use. Other portions of that, Floyd mentioned we got more grant revenue than expected. It's risky business to assume you're gonna get more grant money, because when you don't get it and you counted on it, you now have a hole that you've got to figure out. So we typically estimate conservatively on that. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend changing that practice, even though we find ourselves in a tricky situation financially. And then the rest is hundreds or thousands of little things that were a little bit off, that are tricky to necessarily pin down. But really, if you wanted to take advantage, the place would be not filling positions we haven't been able to fill, like we're taking those out of the budget.
Which is the sort of thing that you present to us, when you think it's the appropriate.
Yep.
Path to take.
And that $800,000 reflects some positions that we were unable to fill through the year that were included in the budget.
Oh, sir, I just wanted to maybe more broad and make it clear like where that came from and why it isn't necessarily just $800,000 that we don't have to include next year.
Right.
But there's maybe very good reason for much of that to still stay in the budget. Because we anticipate that support for the services, even if we couldn't use them this year.
Right. And also keeping in mind, we can get the budget 99% right. And we have a fund balance of $370,000. So 800,000 is, we were 98% right, which is pretty decent batting average.
Any other questions or concerns or thoughts about the fund balance?
Just out of curiosity, are those positions that we're unable to fill listed somewhere?
Almost every time we repost for positions, we
I
put
just
those
didn't know
out.
if we
And
had
here
to
are
put a
positions
list.
we're looking to
You know,
hire
when we're
for.
talking about realizing a savings like this, juxtaposed to unfilled positions, I was just curious what those positions might be. That's all.
Are listed on the MAUSD.org, which isn't working right now. You might want to contact IT.
Okay.
I didn't
But-
work there.
Huh?
Yeah, same problem.
You're working on it?
No, same problem.
Oh,
Yeah, our
okay.
website is not.
Wow.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Look at you.
On the back end,
Yeah.
The best board member we've ever.
See Katrina emailing Michael right now.
But- Anyway, I'd send you the link. I just
That's okay.
can't. Okay.
But they're not cut yet. They're just not filled.
Right.
Correct.
We're not
I
expecting.
guess I was
any
thinking more, what positions have we cut and where would they be listed? And so,
if we get there. then
Yes.
We could certainly have that.
Yeah.
Rushing all night.
Same problem.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to. All right, let's move
Moving
on.
forward.
Discussion F. So this is the course-based choice with ANWSD for gens, and there's a draft memorandum of understanding. So I'll let Patrick take it over because he's been fully engrossed in this.
Yeah, it's exciting and there's a lot of details to figure out, I guess is the summary of this, but you know, as we are experiencing the enrollment decline, like we were talking about before, and Addison Northwest has been experiencing that. We've stayed in conversations about how do we continue to partner. We obviously, as you know, we partner in a lot of ways, more than most districts do. And this is something that we've kind of been noodling on for a couple of years, like, boy, I wonder if this is something we could pull off. And just sort of are reaching that point where it's that much more crucial that we look for ways to partner like this to try and sustain programming for students in the face of the challenges that we're all kind of working through. And so we kind of decided to go for it next year, obviously this year being the year to try and build that. There was a point made during public comment about transportation, and that the draft does say that transportation is a responsibility of parents. And I share the concern about this being equitably accessed, and transportation is a driving factor in that equitable access. So we are in conversations about finding ways to affordably create a shuttle between the buildings. A little tricky because we don't know what the interest is going to be. So when you don't know how many kids you got to shuttle, it's tricky to kind of figure it out. But even if we start with a van or two that gets back and forth, we've got to figure out the cost, and then the staffing of that gets complicated and being able to sustain it. But that's something we're very interested in pursuing. We didn't sort of commit to it in the draft memorandum of understanding yet, but that's something that we're trying to figure out.
Does the other district, I can't remember, do they also utilize Betcha for
They
their?
do.
Okay, okay.
Yep. In fact, Addison Northwest, Addison Central, and MAUSD, is this the first year or second year we're in this contract?
We're in year two.
We're in year two. We strategized for years to come together and kind of get our contract cycles synced up so that we can go out together with one bid, and we're in year 2 of that unified contract, so we all use the same vendor under the same contract.
Yeah, so that could be that's kind of a bright point.
Right, exactly.
And
So-
getting brighter. Some of our neighbors have expressed an interest to matching their contracts to end concurrently with ours, which if you start talking 300 buses, you get the attention of a much better number.
For sure.
And so whether that's a contract through Betcha for a shuttle, or we buy our own vans and employ people to drive them, that's something we've got to figure out still.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And then the cost implications, like, no matter how we shape that, there's a cost to buy vans and employ people, or there's a cost to contract with the bus company.
Liz?
I'm really excited about this. I think this is awesome. I think our community has been asking for ways to collaborate, and it could be challenges, of course. In the highlighted section, eligible for enrollment seems to make sense versus necessarily enrolled. Like maybe they're a part of another program, but they're eligible here. I also just looked up the I have in front of me right now the shuttle bus. And so currently there's kiddos from Bristol that pop on there and go out to Red Cedar, and it goes from the Virgin Shaw's to the New Haven stop, right? Like it's like a pull off, and they meet there, and then it goes from there to Mount Ape, and it is by request, but I'm sure if we had students in it looks like you could get on at Virgin Shaw's a few minutes after, like basically 20 minutes, and you could go from Virgin Shaw's to Mount Abe and transferring once at that New Haven stop. And it looks like it's by request only to stop at certain places, but they're happy to do it. They're going by, they just don't stop if there's no one there. So if we really, I feel like if we had a conversation with them and said, you know, you're always going to stop there because we're always going to have kids there, like, or maybe they'd be willing to go into the Virgin's parking lot at the high school instead of specifically going into the Shaw's, or they added that 2 minutes onto their route. I'm sure they'd be happy. They want their service utilized, and it's a resource that's already there going back and forth all day.
They, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
They're very agreeable. We,
Yes.
two of my kids went to North Branch, and they did a run every day from Middlebury to North Branch like clockwork. They just needed it coordinated by parents, and
Yeah.
it was very easy to do.
That has been it's been a while, but that has been my experience working with them. That they're
Yeah,
very.
and I think I know that they're still doing it for North Branch, so they're very willing. If they know there's gonna be enough
Yeah.
students there and it's predictable,
It's a
and
great idea.
then, yeah, and that would provide much more opportunity for all kids.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's a fully accessible,
Yes,
yeah.
Yep.
So no limitations.
and they're really
Great idea.
We've had great experience when I worked with, or used them for my kiddos, great experience, very responsible, receptive, and yeah.
And free fares, I think it says. I don't know if that's
It
still
is,
the
I
case.
think it's
Yeah.
grant funded, and the more riders they get, the more,
Yeah.
so they're inclined to take on those special routes,
Yep.
That's great.
rural, I think it's a rural.
So yeah, a lot of details still to work out, and logistics, and syncing up schedules, because the high school schedules are not the same. So there's a lot of work to do. But interested in rolling up our sleeves and figuring out how to make it work. And to be honest, a lot of the sleeve rolling up are high school personnel, guidance counselors, administrators, ironing out those details. And there's great interest in all parts to do that. We've been meeting, both, curriculum leaders, superintendents, high school principals have been meeting for a while, talking this through from sort of concept to now digging into some of the logistics, and are all on board and giving us a go.
Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll move down into the board management and governance section. So our first is an action to approve monitoring report for policy 3.1, unity of control. Can I get a motion, please? Justin? Second? Second. Melissa seconds. Discussion.
This is well done.
It's very nice foundation. It's later in the
Helps.
margins, yeah. I guess I brought this up to Aaron just in passing, but I'll say here. The last one to me felt a little weird in the sense that it is sort of this policy language about the superintendent can refuse requests that require the superintendent's opinion on material amount of staff and time or funds. It felt a little bit weird for me to be assessing whether that was happening, given that it's still incumbent on the superintendent being able to say no. Right, so it was weird for me to think that the board was assessing, are we complying with this, when that part of it is, we can ask, but he doesn't have to tell us. Right, like, I don't know what our action is to comply or not, so I wrote that we were in compliance because it didn't feel like there was any problems. And maybe that's good enough, maybe it's useful for us that we just monitor the potential for problem of individual board members or committees overstepping their bounds and demanding information and not taking no for an answer. But in order for us to really monitor that, we'd have to rely on feedback from our administration. I don't know what that means, like, if we keep it the same, or policy and governance thinks about, is there a way to refine that to be very specific about what we're able to monitor? But it felt like I was skirting a little bit of a gray area to say like, yeah, we're complying with that. When there's actually no expectation on our part, other than to let you say no. If we overstep our bounds. Does that make sense?
I think it sounds like it's in the policy to, that's guardrails, so that we're not being like demanding shrews of you and your staff's time. But maybe we need to think about how to put it in so that we can actually set it.
Yeah, so we could assess, are we doing that?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, or maybe it's
Right.
perfectly fine and we just are very clear that like, we're out of compliance here when issues are raised or brought to our attention. Right? And I don't know.
Yeah, that certainly works from my perspective, and I can appreciate the interest on the board, like, rather than it being the sole discretion of the superintendent, if requests exceed what is reasonable. You define reasonable some way that makes sense, and it could be really hard to define reasonable. Technically speaking, and I think it sort of says this, I mean, I can refuse any request for information from any individual board member because no individual board member holds any authority. The only requests that I absolutely am obligated to uphold are directives from the board that are made in a motion that's captured in the minutes. So that's a piece of evidence you can look to. But it's sort of evidence to the contrary that we're talking about, which gets tricky to measure.
Yeah, and plus as an individual board member, I don't actually know what people are asking you.
Right.
Right, like I'm not privy to an individual request to you because I wasn't there. So I wouldn't even know if individuals are asking you things unless you brought that concern to the whole board.
Yeah, and generally speaking, a practice that I think is good for board members to use, and most do, and I certainly do, is I always copy, if a board member writes to me directly and asks a question, I always copy the board chair in my response. So that it's not just me that has a sense of what the cumulative requests are, that the board chair also has that sense. And it could be the vice chair too. Just so that there are multiple people looking in on that, gauging, are we being excessive in the requests that are being made?
And I think too, that there's some, policy, not policy, but like policy language that I've seen other districts use, that's sort of directed to the board, to like, you can ask these types of questions as an individual, and then these types of questions have to be, board questions. So we could do some thinking about, do we structure ourselves so that we're, or make it really clear and sort of a practice we uphold, like we follow that sort of structure so that there's not this gray area of who can ask what and why, right? We're really regimented about that, and maybe that'll take out some of this tension over this question too.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, there's,
I think that could work, although,
Yeah.
your point there too, like, maybe it's simple fixes, whoever we identified to do this monitoring report is copied on those emails. Right, like that way, the person who's actually doing the assessing would have a sense of what's actually being asked of you.
Yep.
And how that's coming about, because then you'd have more like evidence rather than me like sort of picking around, meeting minutes that may or may not actually get at what's going on behind the scene.
Mhm.
That would be why we didn't have to change any policy, or we could change policy. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other. It just felt like it wasn't really a truthful third part of this monitoring report in the sense that like I didn't have information to be able to fully assess it.
I wonder if it would be qualitative data, but another approach instead of copying that person, because just because of the way the board cycle works and the monitoring cycle, if we're looking for the past 12 months, it's probably two different people that were doing this monitoring report. It's less frequent that the board chair turns over. I'm wondering if whomever's writing the report at the time, if they reached out to the superintendent and the board chair, has your experience been that the requests are burdensome, and that becomes a piece of evidence.
Perfect.
And it simplifies things maybe for the person writing the report, so they're not getting all the emails that are.
I was
come
just
through.
thinking of respecting the inbox.
And for what it's worth, I haven't found that the requests have been, they're almost always, some sort of discrete piece of information that someone's just trying to wrap their head around something. And board members are in different sort of places on the continuum of understanding as they're in their second or third meeting, or they've been doing it for, I think Liz is the most veteran now at 8 or 9 years, Liz, right? So it's understandable that different people have, different wonderings and need different information.
So that was the small thing I just wanted to raise, but otherwise it seemed pretty straightforward.
Would you consider layering in, you've got kind of clear with individual board members and very clear if the board asks as a whole. We have committees in between there. What would there be, if we're gonna look at this, would that be another area that would be appropriate for the board to set the parameters of what the committee might do in absence of full board? I don't know, I say it out loud and I'm not quite so convinced. It sounded better in my head.
Well, I think the question you're asking is, does a committee have the same authority as the full board in directing the superintendent?
And certainly as written now, no.
Right.
But could it be a way that we could have more effective committee work? Right, if every time something, like a committee decides something has to filter through the board, like how much do we duplicate those efforts? But how much do we want those efforts to be duplicated? Right?
And how long does it drag out a timeline when
Well,
you're trying to
that's
get
fine.
Well,
things?
that's it,
With
exactly.
facilities and finance, like we've already got a list of questions for y'all that I think Mike has sent you, right? So like if we're having to
We're almost done.
if we're having to wait to the business meeting to get an action, we're never gonna get anything done,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I think we need to be thoughtful about potentially allowing committees to ask those questions. Understanding that some stuff is gonna take a little bit of time, I think we asked some hard questions, right?
Yep.
And they are gonna take a little bit of time, I don't think they're unreasonable given what we're up against.
Yeah.
That sort of things, just using our most recent committee meeting, but I think, I don't know, my personal preference is we should allow the committees the ability to do that.
And I'm comfortable, if the board's comfortable, with committees asking for the information. And if in my judgment, it feels like, this feels like something the whole board needs to direct me, then I would mention that to the committee that's asking for it, and we bring it here. But for the most part, that's not going to be the case, and I don't see slowing the rest of the process up for those probably pretty infrequent times when it feels like it's a little bit more. If that works for you, if that works for me, I'll look to Floyd. You've been helping answer a lot of those questions that just came out. I mean, that,
I work at the convenience of my boss.
I take full advantage.
Not fully aware, and you're very kind most.
So,
Perfect.
okay, based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable, yes or no? Yeah. Does the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation, yes or no? Yes. Okay. All those in favor of approving monitoring report for 3.1, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We'll move down to the next one. Can I please get an action to motion to approve a monitoring report for policy 4.1?
So moved.
Melissa
I'll second.
and Kristen. Discussion.
Oh, Sarah, we threw you right in, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sorry.
Doing this one, I
Oh,
hope.
absolutely none. No, I'm just kidding. Aaron was absolutely amazing.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make
Luckily,
sure.
I have
I
done
haven't
this
even
type
done
of, I have done this before through other board memberships, so, but I was sort of like, wow, trial by fire.
Yeah.
So I am, you know, obviously ready to be humbled, but took a stab at it, so,
Awesome, thank you.
with Aaron's, I mean, a lot of help.
When I realized what it was, I was like, oh my god.
I know, I
How
saw
do you
that. I
do
was
that
like,
to her?
my God, Sarah.
All right. Any thoughts? So the thought on the conclusion for the first one with partial compliance is just because of the walking that line during our budget time.
That's what, we discussed, yes. It sounded as if, again, I'm not,
I know, you weren't
I feel like I'm a
there.
voyeur. in
So I was
this,
kind of there.
it's, you know, and I don't want to put, it just sounded like it was really difficult, and there were other people present that aren't here anymore, not blaming them, but there were some edges, and so it sounded like, in talking with Aaron, it just seemed fair to the process, that we at least acknowledge. It also shows your progress or our progress that we'll be making with relationships in the future that we have.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that we recognize that we had that thing in,
Difficult.
yeah, I'm glad it was captured that way.
I tried to be very kind, and I wasn't here, yeah, 'cause I wasn't here, so I don't.
Any other thoughts? No? So based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation, yes or no?
Yes.
All those in favor of approving monitoring report 4.1, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion
Those
is.
are too kind, I was like ready.
Rip that Band-Aid off.
All right, so the last one is one that's sort of a backlogged item, so can I please get a motion to approve monitoring report 4.7? Kylie?
Second.
Mike second. Discussion. No one? Nothing?
I think that's just a really thorough job here.
I think
Yeah.
the suggestions are nice.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Nice job, Liz.
Evidence is impressive. so.
Liz, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say that Steve did this one last time, and he gave me a really nice space to work with. And Brad and I did do the peer-to-peer evaluation in the last couple of months together, and it was really, really helpful, and we had a great conversation. So I would recommend, if we all really did pair up, and if Aaron, you just set us up and over a phone call, over a Zoom, over coffee. I found it really valuable, and he and I had never sat and had a conversation before. So it was really good relationship building, and I think it would serve us really well as board members, and I look forward to us doing that together more often in a reasonable thing. I don't think it can be the monthly like we had originally dreamed, but maybe every other month, or maybe we switch up partners every time we do it. Just whatever everyone thinks makes sense.
The-
And I'll try to
there's-
follow up.
Sorry. The
Oh, I was
intent was
gonna-
to do it every few months, but we'll
Yeah,
got off track during the budget cycle, but we'll get back. on that.
we will get back to that.
We assign
Thank you.
the positions that are no longer here.
Yeah,
that have been-
Yeah, so we'll redo that sheet, and I'm thinking too, like, we'll just pair up around the table like we did last
Mhm,
time and move on. Anyway, we'll do it in October. Okay. Any other thoughts? No. Based upon the information provided, does the board find that the board's interpretation is reasonable, yes or no? Yes. The data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. All those in favor of approving policy or monitoring report for policy 4.7, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. All right, moving on down to the side letter. So I need a motion to adopt and authorize the chair to sign the side letter to support staff agreement for LPNs.
So moved.
Kristen, second. Melissa, discussion.
Instead of a little more context, it's somewhat self-explanatory in the document, but in the spring, we had a number of our school nurses resign their positions for various reasons. And that created an opportunity to think differently about how we staff our schools from a nursing perspective. And so the direction we moved in was, rather than all of our nurses being RNs who also hold an educator license, that's the threshold for a school nurse. You have to hold both licenses. With school nurses, with the RN and educator license being protected by the professional staff collective bargaining agreement, we wanted to move toward a combination of LPNs and RNs. So that for relatively the same number of dollars, we can increase the nursing support across the schools. It's really hard on smaller schools that have a part-time nurse, so there's days there's no nurse in the building and you have somebody kind of filling in, which is almost always perfectly fine. Except that it's a lot of juggling by the people that are trying to cover the nurse stuff in the middle of the day and everything else that's happening in the middle of the day. In particular, that's the busiest time. But when it's not okay, it's really not okay. So the idea of getting more nursing FTEs for about the same money was appealing. And so we moved in that direction with some success. It's going to take some time to really kind of fully move that way. But we have now a new position that is LPN that wasn't recognized anywhere in the collective bargaining agreement. So the place that position sits now is in our non-union support staff agreement. This would recognize that position under the specialist category within the support staff collective bargaining agreement. So they'd have all those protections there and be recognized by that unit. And this side letter accomplishes that for the remainder of the support staff agreement, which is new this year and has 2 more years and has a 3-year agreement. So it will then sunset at the end of this current agreement unless it's negotiated into a successor agreement.
Did this, or does this at all impact where the RNs are or how they're compensated or anything?
Nope, so the RNs will stay in the professional staff license or professional staff agreement and that same compensation scale. The difference being they have to have an RN and an educator license. And really it's the educator license that puts them in that, because everyone covered by that has an educator license.
Any other questions about this side letter? And this was made in conjunction between the union and you. It wasn't just.
How many of these positions?
Right now, there's 1. When we get where we ultimately want to be, the 3 smaller schools would have a 1.0 LPN. And the bigger schools would have RNs. And RNs, we would have a nurse leader that is an RN that would have some sort of supervisory responsibilities over the LPNs. That's a requirement from a nursing licensing perspective.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
So this letter is simply to engage the union, so they fall under that group.
Yeah, so because it's a collective bargaining agreement, we can't just change it. It has to be done in agreement between the board and the union. And this document codifies that agreement.
It's basically like an addendum, and so the next time they come up for negotiations, I would assume that they would take this side letter and embed it into the next contract rolling forward. If this is the structure they keep.
Well, and Appendix A has been already edited to include the LPNs. I would think they would just use that. I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, side letters often become rolled into the contract moving forward, so it's just the cycle of how it works with the side letters, but yes. you're right. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. All those in favor of to adopt and authorize the chair to sign the side letter, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next is an action item to direct the superintendent to gather information regarding the impact of moving sixth grade to Mount Aid. And I don't know, Mike, if you haven't gotten to the Finance and Facilities Committee discussion yet, but I wonder if you could just all sort of set some context about why we were thinking about
I
that.
was just thinking that. I wondered if it made sense to have that update first and then come
Yeah.
to this, or.
Or we can go do it.
Yeah. we're
Partly
jump back
here
and
and-
forth. Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So, you want?
No,
Okay.
I'm.
Yeah,
I
all right.
pin the needle.
Yeah, perfect. So this stemmed out of our last subcommittee meeting. And really the central focus of that meeting was kind of twofold. I'll do a little more details later on the first part, which was sort of how do we more effectively fulfill the role of sort of monitoring as facilities and finance, like how do we actually do our job there? But the second really big focus of our meeting was thinking about the upcoming budget in light of Patrick's presentation, right? A presentation that basically spelled out that if we don't change much, there's going to be a pretty big tax impact, just as there was this year. And that really got us thinking about, are there both short-term and long-term options that we as the board or we as the committee want more information about to try to help maintain services, ideally improve services within the district, but also curtail some costs. And we'll worry about the long-term ones later. To find some short-term ones, we turned to the K-12 Solutions, the Levinson report. And we looked at that in conjunction with Patrick's letter that he released to us during the budget discussions last year, this new solutions finding in context. Looks like it was on April 1st, in which he sort of presented what we have done already and what we potentially could do, and some sort of interpretation from the administrator's perspective about what suggestions within that report might actually align with the priorities of the administration. That's a fair way of saying it. And so what we really wanted to do were identify short-term, significant cost savings that had support potentially from the K-12, the Levinson report, and also seemed to have some degree of support from the administration as evident in that signed letter. But full words in there, but it seemed like there might be places where there might be some broad agreement as something worth pursuing. And as you can imagine, there weren't a whole lot of big ticket items that had lots of support that would save lots of money perhaps on the tax impact and also maybe improve services. But we identified two possibilities. One of which we asked for a little bit more information in regards to consolidation of central staffing, and we're still working on that. But the second sort of prompted us to bring this discussion to the board, which was about moving the sixth grade to Mount Aid. We thought that this was something that we really needed to bring to the whole board because we'd already sort of roughly discussed this already with the sort of decision to see maybe how it played out in nearby districts. But we felt we wanted to revisit that conversation today, if only because we were concerned that in the absence of revisiting that conversation or others, there wouldn't be any short-term drivers that we as a board could have control over to help mitigate costs in the upcoming budget. So a lot of words. The short of it really is we wanted to have this discussion again with the knowledge that the K-12, the Levinson report suggests savings of around $700,000 potentially. It looked to me like almost all of that, as Patrick alluded to earlier, comes from changes in staffing. So we thought, one, it's been a few years since that report came out. We don't know what the impact would actually be if we suggested that today. And it might be worth asking the administration for a more current projection of what that would look like, both in terms of the financial impacts on the upcoming budget, if we were to implement that, but also on the impacts to student services, right? Would this be something that would still maintain educational goals? Or do they have hesitation or concerns if we were to move forward with that? So we want to bring that to the whole board to see if there's maybe some consensus to at least explore or request some additional information. So that we at least have that information at our disposal when trying to figure out, are there ways that we can sort of finesse this upcoming budget? Well, that largely captures it.
Yeah, I'll see that. I was saying that. She's right as well. Barb?
Yeah, thanks. I would be really interesting to hear a little bit more about the staffing and the savings of money and how that would actually work. Is that outlined in Levinson where I can actually read about that, or are there proposals there, or is that something that needs to be worked through?
So it's a little bit of everything you just said, right? So it was in Levinson. I don't remember what letter it was, sorry. But it was mentioned in there, and then in April of 24, Patrick kind of went through Levinson and said, here's our take on all of these recommendations. And then our request as finance and facilities is a fast, or maybe it was April 23, I don't know. Anyway, fast forward to now, what would that look like now? What is the impact of our financially? What is the impact on student services? So that we have current information as we think about how we move forward as the finance and facilities committee.
Okay, thank you.
I just have and this might be outlined somewhere, but just sort of came to mind when these conversations occurred to, sort of make sure that student services were being met. Was there also consideration from, say, like guidance counselors to see like emotionally, like if these sixth graders are actually like, because I think that's a big piece of it too. Like, sure, it can save money, but is this something that the sixth graders can they handle that? Because that's a really big change.
I think
The
the report did actually mention like, better utilization of the MTSS process, and an improvement in student outcomes. I'm not sure how they gathered that.
Yeah, and I think to that point, I think in terms of timing, especially post-COVID, where we've just seen such an increase in, the challenges with all of that, I think it would be really important to revisit that to see like, how do we feel about this now, where we are given, what has happened, which has been pretty monumental. So, just curious if that's something that's going to be considered and hopefully revisited.
I had the same concerns and would like more information. Also thinking about how we have kids enter into the school system and what age they need to be. So, right, we get a combined class, some sixth grade classes, everybody is turning 13 within the year because their birth date is after September. And then some of the kids are older because they were born, in November or December. So you have such a different group often together as well, developmentally. And a year doesn't seem like much, but I think we all know it can be a lot, even in regards to, their physical selves and their mental health issues.
If I was directed to get this information, part of what I would want to do is, for example, talk with folks in Middlebury that just recently, like they have a couple of years now of sixth graders being in their middle school. Like, rather than speculate how would our kids do,
That would be good.
Yeah.
our kids really aren't that different from that way or that way. So how's it going? Virginia's is brand new this year, but they may have some discoveries already that may be useful in considering this beyond the dollars and cents. I mean, that has a role in this, but it's about, is this best for kids too? So I would want to get some of that probably more qualitative anecdotal kind of data in addition to the dollars and cents, and also recognize that nationally, sixth graders in middle schools is probably more common than not.
And I think when engaging the community also, you know, I mean, obviously not right away, but, you know, parent testimonials and those kind of things, because that's the first thing we're going to hear is, you know, very, you know, specific concerns from community members. I've already heard it actually in my community. People have already been asking questions about where we're at with that.
I think it's gonna trigger, a fear of closing down a school. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Are you trying to free up room in the smaller schools? Or in the large, in the
What's
larger
the bigger
schools, so you
picture?
can move a smaller school to the larger school.
That is an important consideration, right? Like how much would a move of sixth grade, so in addition to the dollars and cents and programmatically, is it good for kids and developmentally, et cetera? How much would moving sixth grade now without the bigger picture figured out drive what the bigger picture is? Or, because I think what you'd want to avoid is next year, sixth grade comes to Mount Abe, and the year after that, we make a middle school at Bristol Elementary School, and they're gonna go to Bristol, and so just thinking about that is important too, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because just sort of thinking about, you know, there are people in the communities that, you know, certainly are very familiar with all of the findings in the Levinson report, and just thinking like, you know, I think we need to be mindful of what people are looking for, and, you know, to your point, like, is this foreshadowing? Like, I think we need to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
And we can't keep everything the same and have a lower tax rate. So-
That's exactly what I'm
Like,
saying,
yeah.
like, how do
And I
we
know
get
Liz has her hand up, but I'll just throw out here, this is just information gathering, so I want to just make that clear, right? Like, we just need the information or what we can gather. We talked about Middlebury, so it's great that you brought that up. So that we have the information, so we can make a more informed decision versus sitting in that back room going, we're gonna do this, and this, and
Right.
not have the information. So
Mhm.
we're not asking for an action to actually do it. We
Yeah.
just want the information about it.
Yeah.
To be clear. Sorry, Liz. Thank you. Go ahead, Liz.
Another conversation I'm excited we're having, because to me, my fear is of being stagnant and being too afraid to have hard conversations, right? So let's get the information, let's get community engagement committee engaged, maybe this is where we start. And because there's also positive, there's also parents that say, boy, my sixth grader is outgrown elementary school. They are ready for that sports team. They are looking forward to it. They want that. They want those opportunities. And it's more reflective of modeling and sharing programs with our neighboring schools, which is something we're looking to do. So if they're sixth graders or with their seventh and eighth graders, a huge part of it, if you've had a kiddo go through that group, I know we did have a couple hard years, but it's a lot of community building, and that's a third year to build that in. In fact, that's what I remember a few years ago is that it's so successful that kind of carries into ninth grade. Even ninth grade has a bit of a team model at Mount Abe. So it's gathering questions, it's gathering information, and it wouldn't affect my understanding what we were able to put in for a vote for next year, because it would take a whole year to implement, correct? Like, this would be savings that wouldn't be seen until the following year. But this is the kind of proactive conversations, whether it ends up happening or not, that I'm really excited we're having.
So far I've sort of gathered, like, if we're gonna direct Patrick to gather information, some things we're looking at are the financial impact, the impact to students, and especially some social emotional impact, readiness, impact and optics for the community, and more specifically, where does this or would it fit into our visioning, you know, where we're moving the district? And then lastly, how long might it take to implement? And again, that sort of circles into that visioning. Is there something I didn't capture or?
One question, and I don't know if it needs to be captured, but for the junior high, just because I have a kid in junior high, isn't the curriculum? So some of the seventh and eighth graders are in class together, right? And then it switches every other year. So how would combining sixth grade affect that curriculum? Is that a?
That's part of what we need to look at with it, when
Is that?
another
something
entire
we should
grade
add?
there, right?
Yeah,
And how is it done? Again.
yeah,
Mhm.
right, learn
And-
markers.
And numbers drives some of that. How many students are in a grade has an impact on how many teachers are needed to do that, and that's sort of why we have we have two teams that are both 7th and 8th grade combined, which is, I think, sort of what you're speaking to. In large part because of numbers.
Barb?
Thank you. I was wondering, as a dreamer here, it would be lovely to be able to invite, teams from middle schools who have those models. I know Winooski does, you say Middlebury, just to kind of present a bird's eye view of what it might look like when we get to that point, but just throwing it out there.
So the things that I've captured that I already went over, and then just add in the sort of curriculum, understanding that impact. And some considerations around with the curriculum. Do you want me to go over the list again? Or does that feel like the ask? Yeah.
I got it.
Vicky, were you able to get those in the minutes?
Okay.
So go over them again.
Or you can share those with Vicky after, if that's easier, or I can get them directly from you, they don't need to be in the minutes, I just want to make sure I get that.
You ready?
Yeah.
You want it? You want it? Okay, so financial impact. Impact to student services. And that would include curriculum impact and considerations. And the social emotional impact and readiness. And then the third one is impact and optics for the community. And then sort of where does that fit with the visioning for the district? Where does the move fit? And then how long would it take to implement?
Now, the visioning for the district wouldn't be information I would be directed to gather, I'm assuming.
Right, we're just thinking like, how does it fit into what, yeah. The impact and optics for the community, I sort of gathered from people that we were interested in it, or actually, I think it was your point, right? You're like, we don't want to move them just over there and then back here. or
Right.
whatever. So just thinking about the longevity of this move.
Well, and really the information that you bring us would then
Help with that.
help with,
Yeah.
is this in the vision?
Right. But the vision doesn't exist.
Right.
So we don't
That's
know if
not
it fits in the
really-
vision because of the vision.
We have some vision, don't we?
So that could be, yeah.
It'll inform our vision, I guess.
So maybe we take that, but that's what you're suggesting. Just leave it as impact and optics for the community.
Even those, I feel like that almost feels more our purview to try and figure out like, how we can direct.
Ownership
speak
linkage kind of thing, right?
on behalf of the
Mhm.
community for how they might see the other 6th grade, like. That feels like that's our hunt, in some ways, like,
Okay.
Could be,
I think it's important to consider, don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but I don't know if that's a request of you.
Right.
For information either.
Liz mentioned perhaps this as a topic for the community engagement committee, maybe that sort of survey of the community, how do you feel about this?
The only way, I guess, it does feel like it could fill into that is when you mentioned reaching out to Middlebury, for example.
Mhm.
Like, you may be able to pull some answers to those kinds of questions based on their experience.
Mhm.
And it obviously would be our specific community, but it would be a like community.
Right. Yep.
So I don't know if people are interested in keeping it there.
Also recognizing it can be kind of iterative, right? Like I can bring information and that may raise other questions that I'll need to go and kind of get more information on, like that's realistically probably how that pans out.
So do we want to keep financial impact, impact to student services, and then sort of a projection of how long it might take to do that work? And then remove impact and optics for the community and sort of continue with seeking out what those might be as we think about this.
And maybe the information I bring from those 3 questions puts a stop to the process and you're not gonna engage the community further because it's a no-go for whatever reason.
What do you think?
I think that
Yeah.
captures what, if I can speak for the committee, like what we were looking
Okay.
for, because, you know, we were really at a loss for trying to figure out what were the steps that we could proactively take as a board and as a committee to try to help mitigate some of the upcoming budget challenges. And without this kind of information, we felt our hands were even more tied. So this is a real big help for us trying to pursue every avenue that seems reasonable that's been proposed, to see what might serve the community, might want to serve our students.
So Vicky, we're gonna just keep financial impact and impact to student services and how long it would take as our ask of Patrick.
So I have, information for Irene to gather, financial impact to the district, impact to student services. Before you had mentioned including curriculum and social emotional
Yep.
impact and readiness.
Yes,
And then the time it would take to implement.
correct.
And then I said the board will follow up on the optics and impact. Would you take that out?
That sounds good.
And depending on the timing of the readiness of that information, like does it go back to the committee or bring it back to the full board first?
I think we would certainly.
Whichever meeting happens
Yeah.
the next after I get the
Yeah.
information
I think that's
together?
efficient.
Okay.
It'd be more efficient, yeah,
Okay.
that one needs.
It is
So
ready.
to
Yeah.
go to the committee.
2 weeks from now. Maybe it's not, maybe I'm more than 2 weeks. I have to look at the calendar, but
I think it's two
That's
weeks,
about
a few days.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, in that case.
We do that meeting a little, I think.
Piece of cake.
This might not be, like,
Right.
this might be being too rigid, but we're not necessarily gonna follow up on anything either unless something comes out of the information that we find.
Right.
Cool.
Right, yeah,
Just for the,
To inform
our decision, something with,
a recommendation.
yeah,
To bring forward to the board
Yes.
at the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, we're not necessarily gonna have anything to follow up on.
Can you hold on to that until public comment?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So. All those in favor of directing the superintendent to gather the information of the financial impact, impact to student services for the curriculum and social emotional, and a projection of how long it might take to implement, to go to the finance and facilities committee.
I'm sorry, did we have a first and second on that? I think, because you went.
Did I not?
Diverted to facilities and finance and kind of came back up, so I don't think you.
Oh, we
Yeah.
didn't open it?
But
Yeah.
You, okay, can I get a motion for that then?
Make a motion.
Okay, Sarah first,
I'll second.
Kristen second, okay. Had our discussion. All those in favor? Please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Sorry about that. Next is an action to appoint a proxy for the VISBA and the VHI annual meetings. Can I get a motion?
sure, so moved.
Mike and Kylie seconds, okay, for discussion. You wanna-
Yeah, sure. So each year, VHI and VisBit, which are 2 programs that we subscribe to, have annual meetings and they vote on various actions at those annual meetings. We have the agendas here tonight. There's not really much action on either of those agendas, this year. I basically say no action, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's to appoint.
the
representatives.
appoint, yeah, appoint a member or something
Yeah.
like that, but no substantive action. And so annually, the board has to decide how they want to handle your votes in that, at those meetings. So you get, 2 votes at each of those meetings because we subscribe to different, policies, I guess, that those companies provide, organizations provide. And you get 1 per. And so you can choose to not appoint a proxy and we don't have votes cast at those meetings. Not a big deal when there's nothing on the agenda. You can sort of sign off your voting authority to the boards of those organizations, and how the board votes is how you vote. Or you can appoint a person from this board to be the proxy to attend the meeting and cast your votes. Those are the options.
And I will say for the visit meeting, Patrick and I will actually be over in Lake Maury at a conference anyway over there, and that's where the visit meeting is being held, so by design, I'll be over there if we were feeling like we wanted a person to do the thing. If not, I don't need to be at a meeting at 8:15 in the morning. So I could potentially be there, but I don't know about the VHI one.
Let's see here when that's happening.
I think this day, oh, it's the same day.
So
Yeah.
They usually do those kind of back to back.
So maybe I'll be,
Meetings.
maybe I'll,
I think that's both of the Friday. Right,
maybe I'll be there for both.
I think so.
I wanna verify.
Yeah, it says October 25th on the
It
VI
does.
one, so.
It says. Okay, well, maybe I'll be there for both. So I could do it, or we could just proxy it and move on. You choose.
Yeah.
I know for the visit one, it was appointing maybe 2 reps or something like that, 2 members.
Yeah, I don't think so on the VI either. I think it's in that packet that you have over there, the agenda. So.
What have we done in the past?
Sometimes we have people show up, and be part of it. I know we had was it Dave Sharp who used to be really into that?
Most of the time, you give the authority to the governing body.
Yeah.
Unless there happens to be somebody going who wants to do it, and that was the case once or twice with
Yeah,
Dave.
yeah, that sounds right.
Hey, if you're willing to,
I'm already there.
it's right, and if it's not too much of an imposition,
I don't think so. I don't remember the agenda for that meeting. I don't think on this.
So VHI is roll call, proof of notice of meeting or waiver of notice, reading of prior annual minutes, report of officers, information exchange and adjournment. And it's October 25th, 8:15, Lake Maury.
I've never been to either one of these. It might just be good information to have.
So 8 and 8:15. The Visbit is 8 o'clock and the VHI is 8:15. The agenda for Visbit.
So you're running out of time.
yeah.
Free coffee, free
I was just gonna
donuts.
say free
Anything
coffee.
on?
All right, so I'll just go. How about that? Okay,
Sounds
Thank you, we
Karen.
appreciate it.
okay, so,
Yeah.
so appoint, so I guess it's an action to appoint, instead of proxy, it would be a friendly amendment to appoint me
You as proxy.
as proxy.
So moved.
Oh.
Second,
Okay. I don't know.
or did we?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, it's getting late. I was just trying to move it
From, sorry, okay, all those in favor then of appointing me as proxy for the Visbit and VHI annual meetings, please say aye.
That's great.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next is finance and facilities update.
First, so you already got a bunch from us, but I'll spend just a minute or two talking about the first part. I think we had a really productive conversation that started on sort of the process for signing up on pay orders. Something we'd actually talked about before, but we wanted to bring back everybody up to speed. But what that really kind of bloomed into was kind of a discussion about oversight and how we as a committee can maybe better fulfill that role, both for facilities and for finance. And so out of that, we raised a number of questions to the administration, which it sounds like they're working on, really with the idea of trying to improve lines of communication, so that we as a subcommittee can kind of keep a closer eye on facility spending, to keep a closer eye on where differences between projected spending and actual spending is occurring within the budget itself, so that we'd be more informed when we came back to the full board meeting. Essentially, it's our way of saying that the financial update that Floyd provides in that financial report, as it were, which is super useful, but really dense. We were trying to identify ways that we could kind of circumvent that a little bit and highlight maybe areas that we really want to focus on in a way that's a little bit more approachable for all of us, except for Melissa, who apparently is very comfortable with the financial report itself. But to get the rest of us on board, we came up with a few ideas of ways to improve those processes. So we'll tell you about those as they unfold. But it was the early stage of like, how do we actually do this committee's work in a way that might actually get done?
Any questions about that? Okay. Update from policy and governance. Wanna do it?
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Let's see. We had our first meeting with, it was just Aaron and I, right?
Yeah, we sure was.
And Patrick
And
and,
Katrina.
Aaron and I are gonna co-chair. That way I can kind of learn the process and not, yeah, just learn the process and feel more comfortable with that. And then Steve had set us up for success with all his spreadsheets and notes and everything. So I think our goal is just to kind of go through the list of where he's left off, kind of bit by bit and chip away at it. And obviously when stuff comes up, like, Liz had wrote in her monitoring report, is there a language or a wording thing, like maybe that jumps the line or something, but I don't know, I'm still learning. So thank you, Steve. Wherever he's at.
He's probably in bed.
He's probably in bed. Yeah.
He's currently doing whatever he wants.
Exactly. Or what else wants him to do.
Great. Update from community engagement.
I'll jump in. So we have I would be interested in feedback about this possible budget engagement planning process. It really was kind of reflective of previous years. It should, the sooner the better on picking dates. So then it's just a consistent message to start sharing out information. Formal date for January, for February. In November, we did talk about November 12th, possibly the Tuesday after elections being our first forum. I guess I think October felt a little early, but we were hoping to do really some sort of engagement every month. I've been inspired by what we did at the last budget season. Not that we need that intensity, but to somehow build it in regularly, opportunities for communication. And I think sixth grade changes for the sixth graders would certainly draw some engagement and some great questions that we can bring back. And then it will be sort of open-ended, because even if you have a topic, anything can be brought forward in that. Anybody's priorities, students, all kinds of information could come up. And then longer term, really thinking about our intention of engagement, and some other links to really, I know that things have changed since we did the Let's Talk work back when when we went to all the towns and got a lot of feedback about what we love about our schools, what needs improvement, all of that. A lot of good work has happened, so it felt important to there's some bullets there about the results of community surveys that have happened over time, and there's certainly some really great consistencies, and moving sixth graders was brought up. And I know it's not in here, but at MAUSD at one point there was even a wall that had post-its that students just kind of grabbed and placed up there. And I didn't end up it kind of was private just for them. Like they wrote it. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to share this with the whole public. But I remember looking at it when I went to a school play, and it's an example to me of student voice and what they want out of their school day and what they look forward to and what is challenging for them. So I I don't know. Hopefully this looks like we're starting to form some kind of a plan. And I guess what we need from the full board is go ahead on some dates for engagement, and also would everybody kind of be open to an idea of maybe in October, because our committee meetings do tend to be shorter. So starting 6 to 7 with a forum, an open community forum that's not board, public comment, and then maybe people might stick around and join a committee and talk through some of the work. I don't know. It's kind of just seeing what people's thoughts and feelings are, and we discussed a lot. We went down a lot of different roads, and it was somewhat informal. We didn't elect our chair. So at the next one we'll do that, and I'll have be a little more organized. So that was us getting back up and rolling after a pause that we had all taken in our committee work this spring.
So thoughts on these dates, everybody? I like it. I think from the page earlier. I think it's important. We've all said that, so. Yeah, I think too, if you're utilizing your community engagement meeting, like where you're inviting people or you're, trying to cast a wider net, I think that use of time is really that's a good use of time, I think, in starting the process. Are you envisioning that forums would include, like the one on November 12th, for example, might include all board members, or is that just, you're thinking community engagement is doing that? Did you have a thought about the November 12th date?
Not particularly. That's not, I didn't, honestly. No, so it's kind of, what do we want as a board? What do we think we'll have to present in November? Will we have a substantial slideshow of where we might be going and what the options are? So yeah, I don't know. I think community engagement certainly could present a slideshow and gather feedback. We've done that before, and then some of the heavier work that Mike did with the videos and the committee put together last year, where he laid out, that was really great engagement, and then we took questions on that. I don't, what do people want it to look like, and how do we, it really is just an attempt to push everything forward a little bit. And then if Beth or if you have anything to add that I might be missing. We had a few people. We had Nancy and Jennifer and Alyssa, and
I think in terms of who we're thinking of, the informal panel, I don't think we want to have the whole board, because then it would have to be a quorum.
Yeah.
And plus, I think it's a little bit more approachable if it's just, a couple of us that are on the committee. And Liz, jump in if I'm misinterpreting any of this. And for any questions that we can't answer, we can bring it back to the board and get it on the agenda. I think that's kind of what we took from it, and just sort of get a baseline and see how the first couple go, and then kind of go from there, because you got to start somewhere.
Totally. And I bring it up only because November 5th is the elections, right?
Yeah.
And so thinking about, do we want to have our committee meetings on the same day as elections, and then do we bump them? And so thinking about maybe that might just be your committee meeting date.
Anyway. Yeah, and we were thinking that timing, just because it's like the ironic timing of like a vote kind of speaks to like, hey, so speaking of voting, where's the budget? Like, that's not about,
On November 5th, you're thinking?
no, but for our, our committee meeting, the next,
The next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's still fresh.
Yeah.
When
I
we
don't know,
want it to
I
be or
don't know
not.
that we got that far as a committee, really.
Well, I like it so far and I don't have any issues with it. For a tentative plan. Okay, so besides us feeling okay with it, Liz, do you need any other like formal help or guidance, or you're just the temperature check on this?
Yeah, I mean, if this feels good, I think we should, maybe we could send out or figure out some dates, make it official, like we could say we're gonna do November 12th, and our next meeting in October can be planning November 12th. And then as we get more information from the other committees, we're working together, right? We're working together on getting feedback. After we hear more about sixth graders, we can work together with the finance committee. Once you have something to share out to the community, we can push that out. Yeah, just nice to kind of go over this and for our committees to do what the finance committee did and get some feedback to keep moving forward and make sure we're all kind of collaborating in our work.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Liz. And thanks for doing that hard work. Big. Okay, the next is a discussion item for the board protocol for the public comment process. And this was originally started by Steve and Krista a while back. During a time when we also had some contentious stuff going on and feeling like it's important that we are articulate about what we expect from ourselves when we're engaging with the community, but we're also articulate about how we expect communities to interact with us and sort of what parameters exist, so that the expectations are really present and forward, and we're a little more transparent about those expectations. And I know recently we've come across a few times where we've had some adjustments to public comment and things of that nature, and that can get a little sticky. Just doing that work is tricky and I want public to come and give us comments, but I don't want to spend time micromanaging where those comments sit on an agenda. So just trying to be more clear and open about how we do our work and why. And so I had taken what Krista and Steve had started and I just made some adjustments to it, like adding some VSA language to it, trying to talk a little bit about our expectations, how we use executive sessions, the difference between our business meetings and our committee meetings, and trying to find ways where community can come in and feel like there are spaces for them to come into, right? So the goal of this document isn't to push people away or create barriers. It's really to say, here's where we come together. But my hope is that we're able to put this out somewhere on our board page or something like that, where it's really clear and start to do more of this type of stuff where we're like, here's how we operate and why. And then I think maybe we'll clear up some of that gray area that community members feel, but wanted to offer this as sort of a second stab at this process.
Just looking at the different ways to record the
Mhm.
public comment.
Mhm.
I am inclined to be in favor of number 4, where it specifies what the comment was. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, when people come to when they come forward to give public comment, that they want to be heard.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is, to me at least, I think it should be reflected in the minutes, what they had to say. And I think the other thing that we could do is perhaps attach, add a hyperlink for, you know, the written comment that they provided, you know, because I know that there have been some written testimonies that have been given, you know, again, you know, sort of recognizing like, we want to make sure that this is being recorded. I think that's important.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thought of putting together like a, you know, something on our website or whatever, something that I found to be incredibly helpful when I was brand new to the board, because like Sarah, I came in halfway, you know, at like halftime, and I didn't quite understand why people would come forward and have a comment and like the board would just.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is awkward. I didn't, you know, it was never really explained. Again, timing, you know, why we don't typically do that. So I think by making that perfectly clear too, I think that will be helpful for people who, you know, navigate their way. You know, just it's sort of like, this is part of Robert's rules and this is why we don't, or why we do. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Fine.
I was just gonna say, did that, under the board interactions during public comment, does that feel like it captures what you're saying? Or does it need to be
Yeah,
more?
yeah, I was looking specifically at the part where it says with regard to public comments, the general outline of their comments should be captured in a neutral tone.
I know that, but
Yeah.
but your second.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't,
Yes.
okay, yep. Sorry, Kylie.
I can't remember, if we talked about this at the retreat or maybe in our committee meeting. We talked about, so sometimes there's public comment and then the response is, we'll get back to you with that answer. We'll send you an email. And there had been a discussion about perhaps putting that on the website. When did we-
Oh, like an FAQ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what, okay.
Yeah.
And we, I think in the finance committee decided we were gonna try to. Any public comment that had a question that we need to get back to, actually try to include in it.
That's what it
Updated
was.
minutes.
Thank you. Yeah.
That was our goal.
A response.
It's like, here's the comment, and then here's like the board's response. Knowing that the timeline of that might be tricky if it takes too long to get the information, but. The sort of policy that we decided for our subcommittee was that we were going to try our best to
Yeah.
So
have the answer linked to the public comment in the minutes whenever possible, because they would just keep everything contained.
I think that's important too, because that kind of goes along with acknowledging question was asked and there's we'll get back to you.
And also, everybody, if they're interested, can find the answer.
Totally.
And not just that community.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only
right.
challenge I think is the minutes have to be within a week. something like
Draft minutes have to be posted in 5 days, yeah.
5 days, so there's that, sometimes if something asks a little bit more and we haven't quite figured out what the right move is there.
You could make it part of the next
Well,
month's
even.
Yeah,
minutes.
well,
Get
maybe we could,
comments.
or maybe we could amend.
You
the
could amend
minutes
it a month
at the-
later, yeah.
at the previous meeting, like, there might be ways that we can adhere to that aspiration, even in those longer times.
Cause it's good to have it, but also not for us to feel rushed, so that we're giving an answer that
It's
is
thoughtful.
that's thoughtful and that we collaborate on the answer, maybe possibly even.
Any other thoughts?
When you suggest at the end dedicating 3 board meetings a year solely to public comment, like that feels like something that we could do every October, right? Suggestions for CEC. And I guess I guess I have the same question back, or not the same, but a similar question is when we're envisioning the public comment, is that really just the intake of information, kind of like how our last budget meeting is really an output of information? Is that kind of what you're envisioning versus a little back and forth in small groups? I'd like to make that a reality. I think our committee would like to make that a reality sooner than later. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that, we've done a little bit of that work, right, as a board and creating space for a more free flow of information. And with some boundaries, right, in place. But if we have topics that feel big and it feels important as a whole board to sit and get that information, that feels like something we should prioritize is opening the floor to people and having that back and forth. Now 3 is a great target number. Do we need 3? Who knows? Or, you know, do we bake it into committee meetings because the committees are diving into specific topics, right? And it can be a little bit less formal than the full board can. But yeah, I think the reality of that is something we'd like to do and also tricky, right? Because we have to be careful about how far in we're going or what are our parameters, right? So if we're going to engage in that work, being really mindful about what that looks like. But yeah, I agree that those are really helpful. I thought they were helpful to get a lot of community voice really quickly. But again, those are sort of additional suggestions, things we could think about as we move forward, so. Barb?
Yeah, and I apologize, it may not fit directly into your document, but this seemed to be an appropriate time to mention. It brought to my attention during those larger meetings where we had public comment that it was very difficult for some people to hear. And so I just want to make it known that we probably need to take a bigger effort to make sure that the crowd can hear what's being said from the different board members and from whoever's in the audience.
Yeah, yeah, that's where the microphones came in for a little while, where we had that big speaker and the microphone thing. Yeah, our numbers have dwindled for people attending in person, so, you know. But if we can sort of reliably predict when it might be busy, we can still have the access to those.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Any other thoughts? We'll move down then to discussion item K, which is the Act 46 Articles of Agreement.
Sort of prompted by the request to get information about moving 6th grade and recognition of the relatively short time most board members have been on the board, it kind of prompted me to think, boy, I had to surface this Act 46 document that is a really important document that you all ought to be aware of. It is effectively a governing document for this board. It outlines what authority the board has and what authority the board doesn't have, as we talked about making change, whatever that change might be. So mostly just wanted to call your attention to the fact that this exists, and it's a really important document for these conversations going forward. And pretty specifically articulating that Article 10 of this, these Act 46 Articles of Agreement is the article that was put to a vote of the electorate. And so Article 10 is basically a combination of various other articles of the Articles of Agreement. Because those were voted on by the electorate, Article 10, anything in Article 10 can only be changed by a vote of the electorate. So as you're contemplating various options going forward, that's important to know. Every other article in the Articles of Agreement can be changed by a vote of the board. If you feel that any change to the articles is necessary to get where you need to be. Don't know what the answer to that is yet, because we don't really know what we're trying to do yet, but it was important to, as we're starting down this path of what are we going to do in response to these challenges, that we know that this exists, and it has an impact on what you can and can't do and how you can and can't do those things.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about that? And there was some other additional context in the chair notes too, which showed you like a representation of the impact of that article. All right. We'll open the floor for public comment. It's all
If
you.
you'd
Like to Nancy or there's a few people.
Thanks. As I was listening to the conversation about gathering, information on the impact of moving sixth grade, I hope that you'll consider this suggestion, in addition to the categories you listed, very important categories to explore. I think one other really important category is providing the board with information about current sixth grade experience in our elementary schools and what the benefits are for kids and communities of having, of being, having sixth graders in their hometown schools. When you explore what's going on in Middlebury and maybe what will be going, or was just begun to go on in Virgins, you'll hear, I'm sure, about the benefits that they have built in for sixth graders who are now in, or about to be in their school, in their middle school. So it'll be important for the board to get more familiar than most people probably are with what current sixth grade experience is, in our district now. So I hope you'll consider adding that to the list.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I guess the only other thing I wanted to point out, I was a member of the Act 46 committee, so I was very familiar with what an adventure that was for those of us who were there. And as Patrick said, that Article 10, the pieces of the Articles of Agreement that are in Article 10 were put there intentionally so that only voters could change them. But there is another article in I think it's Article 16, that has a pretty direct statement about what should happen with the kids who are in elementary school, the grades that are in elementary schools now. So to make a change, that article, the board would need to change that article explicitly. But that was an article that was made clear, that we put in intentional, that the committee put in intentionally. And so it wouldn't be lightly that you'd want to be changing that one either. But I'm sure you wouldn't be making that change lightly in any case.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. So next on the agenda is the need for an executive session, but before we can do that, we have to determine that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage. And this executive session is pending or probable civil litigation. So can I get a motion to determine that premature general public knowledge would place us at a disadvantage?
So moved.
Kristen, second Melissa. All those in favor of determining that premature general public knowledge would place us at a disadvantage, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now I need a motion to enter executive session under T1 VSA 5313 A1E pending or probable civil litigation. And inviting in Floyd and Patrick. Mike? Riley, all those in favor of entering executive session at 9:27, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
This is good to do. Yeah, I do like it. Gonna check with what's in my hands. See if you wanna stay here or elsewhere.
You get
This
this
one
one.
Oh.
sit out or one that I?
It's
Do
okay.
we want to
Do we need
invite-
to-
Oh,
Yeah, 5-minute break.
how does that work?
You can invite anyone you want into executive session.
Are people comfortable inviting?
Fire the deep end.
Okay.
Let's go.
Also invite in Meredith.
Trial by fire.
Heck,
yeah.
You have to do another motion. It's only a factor.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
then I
We'll dismiss you for tonight, but I'll be in touch. Can you give me your phone number?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, by the way. I'm so excited.
Did we stay here for this one too?
Well, I
Okay.
think she may decide to, just because.
851.
And then she'll put us.
Sorry, 85 West.
1:30.
Thanks, Katrina.
Okay.
I know you don't, you just got kid duty tomorrow.
That's right.
You know,
Mine.
someone tell you that.
All right. Okay.
It was nice meeting you all.
Yeah. Everyone say bye to Meredith.
Bye,
Bye,
Meredith.
Meredith.
Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Sweet.
Thanks,
See you in 2 weeks.
For folks online, we're just gonna enter an executive session, so you're welcome to stay, but I don't know. You do you. Bye, Meredith. Talk to you soon. Yeah.
I will tell you. The night.
So for
density
board
waves.
members online, we'll create a breakout room.
It's, the last one I was in the office in Melbourne, and I was like,
Falling asleep.
I was like, I'm usually in bed.
Oh, wait, no, there's.
Never
mind.
Yeah,
I like my
I may not be
sleep.
asleep, but I.
we'll go to the,
Other.
We're gonna go the other.
oh no, hold on, maybe we don't have to, maybe if we create a breakout room here, we can stay here.
Yep, and bring our friends.
And just a board.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we are. We don't, we're all set. I'll send this up
We
to.
always thank you. Thank you so much.
Jennifer Noda. On
Yep.
your little last emotion.
Thank you.
Where in Middlebury you work, sorry?
I actually work in New York in Port Henry's, my main office, and I have a
Good.
small private practice above Countryside Cape. I do psychotherapy after hours,
Gotcha.
yeah, for fun.
Sounds fun.
Okay, next on the agenda is an executive under T1 VSA 5313A3. Evaluation of a public officer. Can I please get a motion? So moved. Melissa?
I'll second.
Kristen? All those in favor of entering executive at 9:50, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay. So last is,
I'll just end the breakout and that will kick Barb in if she's having a hard time.
okay. Last on the agenda is our board self-evaluation.
Would you like me to read them?
Ethan, thank you.
Okay, level of engagement of all board members? Aye. Yeah. Was the agenda followed? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Any comments about that?
Thought it went really well tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yep.
on hard topics.
Yep.
Yeah. Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board?
Yeah. Always.
Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any comments on that? Okay, other feedback for the chair?
That's the good work.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And what went well with the meeting?
I think as discussed, I think the conversations were positive. And I think that, yeah,
was nice to hear the, the other committees.
Mhm.
Findings, and then,
Mhm.
you know, Liz, your guys' timeline, like what you guys are working on.
And we added a board member.
Board member.
Okay, and what suggestion do you have for ways to improve future meetings?
Yeah, yeah, I'm working on that.
Not so much, because that was a bad call.
Oh, God.
I'll let Malachi.
You want to hear what I wrote?
Yes.
Continue to stay calm and professional during our meetings.
Two thumbs up on that.
All right, I guess that it. I think so.
Okay. All right,
I'm glad.
can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
please? Second. Third, I think Melissa, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Bye. I'll check in with you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, thank you.
Yeah.